That's true.
Maybe I misheard, but I think you said like about 24 weeks. What is it that makes it the case that that's the cutoff time?
Because that's when the fetus is able to feel, I think, is when and why they have set it at that time.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, but from my perspective, I think that should be an open discussion and should be based on, and probably shouldn't be a certain. It's always 24 weeks. It should be case by case.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's not black and white because
Yeah. Yeah.
again, there's things that pop up, medically
Right.
that can happen and do happen.
Right.
And
At least in the sense of most cases where it's safe to deliver the being, do you think it's okay to not allow the mother to abort the baby in that situation?
Women don't even figure out they're pregnant until 6 weeks, often, maybe even
Yep.
longer. So.
Yep, and I think it's something like 85% of them. 85% of them are in the first trimester that
Right.
are term.
Right.
So.
Oh, more message.
At least in the sense of most cases where it's safe to deliver the being, do you think it's okay to not allow the mother to abort the baby in that situation?
I'm a little confused. Did you understand what he was asking?
No, I'm confused. Would you like to invite him to the? I think he wants to join the chat. Shall we?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
How are you?
Hello.
Hi.
It was just my question was that I was just curious that if you said that the cutoff was about 24 weeks, and I was just curious that you think that in that case it's okay to violate the autonomy of the mother to for her body in that case, right? As soon as it reaches 24 weeks.
You're cutting out.
Oh, am I cutting out?
I heard violate the autonomy.
Yeah, is it okay to violate the autonomy of the mother at 24 weeks?
How is it violating?
Well, because you're preventing her from aborting at 24 weeks. Anything further would be morally wrong, correct?
No, because it's not black and white. There's cases where if there's a medical reason for it, then
sure.
Yes, sometimes it is the best option, especially with some of these conditions where they're not going to live,
Right.
Yeah, so let's say in most cases where it's safe.
Well, I don't think it's. I think that this is my opinion. Morals are not. There's no absolute morals.
I agree.
Morals are relative, right? So I think you'd have to go case by case. Like, what if a child was born and was but was so deformed that they were in pain, that it was torture for that child?
Oh yeah, well I would be okay. Like I would be okay with mercy killing. Mercy killing doesn't seem to be like an issue, but I'm just talking about in the majority of cases where it's safe to do so, and it wouldn't kill the baby either, and the baby doesn't end up having being tortured and having a good horrible life. I just mean in most cases. Do you think it's okay to violate the autonomy of the mother after 24 weeks to abort the baby?
I don't know. You're not really making sense because again.
I can go explain it deeper. So what I mean is, you think it's wrong to violate the autonomy of the mother, correct?
You need to explain violate the autonomy. Like
for example,
what are you saying? Violate?
Yeah. So you think it's wrong to prevent the mother from aborting before the 24-week mark, right?
No.
You don't think it's wrong to violate her autonomy to abort before 24 weeks?
No, because if she's going in to terminate a pregnancy, most of the time that's done within the first trimester. I'm
Well, yeah,
I think
for the sake of the argument, I'm talking about the 24-week mark. I'm after the 24-week mark.
I think he's trying to make a point of like where the line is, where
Exactly.
the fetus's rights trump the woman's rights. I think is what he's trying to get at.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's correct.
From my opinion, I'll let Lyric answer, but from my opinion, that is something up for discussion, and as a society, we should set that line. That line is, there is no magic line. It can be wherever we decide as a society that should be.
Yeah.
There is no special thing.
Yeah, no. It's just I want to know what her line is. I understand that morality is relative, and I just want to know where does she draw the line, because it seems like she's against violating the autonomy before the 24-week mark, but is she okay if someone like any mother decides to abort after the 24-week mark? And then is it the case that it's okay to violate the autonomy of the mother in that sense because of the baby, because it can feel pain and things like this?
Yeah, I think she.
Yeah, she dropped.
I think another person.
Yeah, it's okay. But I do have to go soon. It was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was fun though. I usually love these types of discussions on ethics and philosophy.
Right.
It's great. Oh wow. Okay, so
Great.
this is a friend of mine. His name is Void Out.
sorry, I lost my connection there. It was cutting out, and then I just got kicked out. Dan, it was really nice talking to you. I hope you have a good night.
Thanks, Lyric. Take care.
Oh, I wanted to finish the discussion.
Yeah, well, another time. Hey, Rockster, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yep,
we can hear you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We were just talking about like the topic of abortion, and I think it was brought up that the 24-month mark as a market of anything further would be like as in like wrong.
So I don't agree with that statement. I don't think it's wrong. I believe that was set because it's when the fetus is viable, I believe. But that doesn't mean it can't be set at another line. I guess that's what, from my perspective, society can decide where that line is. We can decide right up to birth if we wanted to.
Perhaps there's like a general heuristic, the 24 weeks? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I mean, it's weeks, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
So as a general heuristic, like the 24 weeks is like, I guess like the point in which like it's not okay as a general heuristic, but if there's like extrinsic factors that play into it, then it can also shift like the moral weighting of the action.
Right.
So so you would say as long as society deems it that like around the close to the 8th month mark, you would find.
No, I would say we should base these decisions on science and facts, not on mysticism. So
right, I agree. But like, when does it become like a moral issue, right? When does it become?
It's always a moral issue.
I can agree.
It's a moral issue from day one.
No, I just mean like with you. Like, do you have like when does it become a moral issue within your moral subjective preferences?
My personal moral definition. That's a good question. I tend to err on the side of giving the woman autonomy. I don't know. I would err on the side of giving the woman more autonomy because perhaps, like Ruxter said, we set a line, but then if there are extenuating circumstances, we allow for that. So one of the problems is that some women don't know they're pregnant until later.
Right.
But
are you comfortable enough to allowing their bodily autonomy to go as far as it can to like maybe almost close to the 9th month mark? Do you find that as a morally acceptable thing?
I don't know. I don't know what. I mean, I tend to think maybe because if the woman can't care for the baby, and the baby is going to live a horrible life, I don't know.
Let's say it won't.
Call.
Let's say it won't. Will you still find it morally acceptable to violate her autonomy in that situation, where the baby?
I don't
won't?
know. I'm not a philosopher, so what I'm saying is that I think there needs to be a line that we agree, and I would err towards the side of later. In other words, give the woman more bodily autonomy than less. I don't know where that line is. I can't say it would be this many weeks, this many weeks. I would have to, talk to a fetal, talk to folks that understand about child development and what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Then we have to talk about, are we overpopulated? Is having too many babies a huge problem from a societal standpoint? Is that another factor to weigh into this? Mm-hmm. So that's why we need those kind of discussions. I'm not qualified to have those, but I would tend to err on giving the woman more bodily autonomy. Not 100% though, because at some point,
right? Because if you give the woman, if you give the woman full bodily autonomy over the baby or whatever you want to call it, fetus, whatever, then technically it should be morally acceptable because it's it being inside of her body, her having the right to do whatever she wants with her body. It would be morally acceptable to, if the mother chose to, torture the baby inside of her if she ever chose to because of bodily autonomy. Well,
that brings up the question, as I say, about how you treat kids. Are kids your property to do with what you will, or do you have to treat them in a certain way? I would argue that bringing a child up religiously with a fear of hell is a form of child abuse, and yet we allow that right now. And
sure.
So, you're getting into questions of
sure, yeah. I do agree with you. Like, that could be some type of I guess mental anguish towards the child. But what I just mean, that kind of sidesteps the question where we don't grant the mother full bodily autonomy over the baby, because if that was the case, it would be morally justified in torturing the baby as long as it's inside of her, right?
Yeah, but it is. But we've already morally justified that in the past. We allow.
Well, yeah, I don't think we want to do that.
Hold on. We allow women to drink alcohol and to smoke when we know that's hurting the baby.
Sure.
We in America do not criminalize that. The woman does not go to jail for doing that. We encourage her not to do that, but we don't force that. So we do allow them to effectively torture or harm the baby.
Yeah,
women can take drugs and heroin and things that hurt the baby, and we do not, as long as what they're doing is legal. Heroin is not legal, but they can do things that harm the baby, and we do not put the woman in jail.
100%, and I think that sounds like morally terrible. Allow for the torturing of babies. That sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, except they're not babies at that point. They're still embryos that are.
Well, I'm talking presumably if they can feel pain, right? Because in order to be tortured, it presupposes they have some type of conscious experience. They would be kind of around that time where it would be considered like a baby. So
right, and that's where we need the experts to weigh in and go, at what point does this organism feel pain? At what point, and then you have to start saying things that's
right. And that's the argument that I forget her name, but she was using the pain argument, and generally I would agree with it. I think mine goes a little bit deeper than that. But for the case of what she was saying for pain, it seems like her criterions were kind of self-contradictory, where she values bodily autonomy, but she also values the baby being feeling pain. And at which point I would ask if she would violate the mother's bodily autonomy for the sake of the baby feeling pain, would that be morally sufficient to prevent her from aborting any fetus or any baby at any point? That's kind of where it's kind of self-contradictory. That's why I was kind of attacking that kind of framework.
But again, I think it also depends on some societal things, right? So, for example, if overpopulation was a serious problem, then I would argue that giving the mother more bodily autonomy might be better for the world and better for the most number of people. So, in my mind, this is my view, morality is the most good for the most number of people. And
yeah,
that sounds like utilitarianism.
Yeah, he is.
Sounds like what?
Utilitarianism.
Yeah, effectively, except for not exactly. There is no. I don't think there's any yardstick that says something is good or something is bad. it is tends towards the utilitarian view. Whoops, sorry, I just lost my plug here. It tends to utilitarianism, but we have to have some ways to determine what's moral and what's not. And for me, in my view, is I want to live in a society where the most people have the most good.
Right, and I will not generally, in certain circumstances, right? Because I would be like I would say if the well-being increased outweighs the rights violation, then definitely I would say, yeah, sure, like 100% it's okay to like kill kill one to save 1,000 type of like scenario, or for the well-being of the majority. But
so here's a good point about that. I have a public health background, right? So we don't want to violate personal rights. Let's look at the coronavirus and masking, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I really wish we would have had, a stronger mask mandate and a stronger lockdown like other countries did, because in this case, 3 months of stricter, I will not say violations of personal freedom, but stricter. I don't know what the word is. We force people, which is America doesn't like to do that, or if people voluntarily did this, is what I would hope they did. We could have really solved or seriously mitigated the deaths and the damage done from coronavirus. But Americans don't want their personal freedoms violated, and so would refuse to do that. And to me, that's insane. I don't want to live in a country where we lock everybody down unless, for example, the virus was so deadly it was killing at a much, much higher rate. We'd have to lock everybody down. I am disappointed that Americans did not look at the situation and say, you know what? If we all just do this for 3 months voluntarily, we can create a lot of good in the country. And Americans failed in that moral test, in my opinion. So
well, yeah, I would say kind of like sort of maybe the same thing. I don't know. I don't know too much about the numbers when it comes to coronavirus and things like that. But I could give like a fairly quick example where, it would be, I would see it as morally wrong to kill one person, to save, to murder one person to save two, right? But as soon as you keep increasing that number, I would find it probably morally permissible. Let's say increase it to 10,000 people, and we're only killing one. I would find it morally okay to violate the right to life of that one individual for the sake of, in the case, that majority.
Yeah, see,
there's definitely a threshold. There's definitely a threshold. Go ahead.
The problem I have with that is we never know. It's never black or white, right? You never know that killing a small number of people is going to save a large number of people. It's always fuzzy. If it were ever black and white, you would be correct. But the reality is that these decisions are made where you don't know. There may be a situation where you don't have to kill those small people to save those people, and we don't know that. So I don't think in reality you're ever put in a situation where it's like the trolley problem where you can just go left or right and kill that. It doesn't work that way.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. The idea, what I was testing, it was simply like the consistency of it. I just would like just the principle aspect of it. Where do you think it's like the whole, when it comes to the whole bodily autonomy, we grant that more as like a morally righteous thing, but we also, as the lady previously said, she also grants like pain, right? And I was just trying to see if that seems consistent.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I get it. But again, humans are not always consistent.
Yeah, and that's kind of a bad thing.
Yeah, I know, but we're not machines either, and yeah.
Of course.
I mean, I think that I think morality can shift from situation to situation, moment to moment. You don't have to be consistent. This is my personal view. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Do I think it's wrong for people to become vigilantes and take the law into their own hands and go hunting down someone that did a crime and administer justice? I think that's wrong. Okay, I do. However, if I walk in and a rapist is in the middle of raping my wife and then runs out, damn right, I feel like I can go out, get a gun, chase them down, shoot them, and kill them. Do I think that's immoral? Absolutely not. Do I want other people doing that? Absolutely not. And it's inconsistent. You're right. But that's the truth. I do not want to live in a world where vigilantism is the law of the land. However, if it happened to me, sure, I want to be able to do that. And I know it's contradictory, but that's the way it is. So.
Well, you would say more like if vigilantism increases the net well-being, you would say it could be morally justified, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't. I know it doesn't because people.
No, yeah.
Right,
if it does, right?
But it doesn't because in practice, vigilantism will just make it more chaotic.
Right.
In theory, I would agree, but again, the world doesn't work in theory. I know that if everybody did what I would do, then it would be chaos.
Yeah.
Because people would make mistakes.
For sure, I agree with you. But ethics.
But in my situation.
Go ahead. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. No, and in my situation, if I was 100% certain of what I saw, witnessed, then I would say I'm morally justified to do it, even though no one else would believe it because I was the only one there to witness it. I mean, my wife would be there, but I don't care about that. But you see what I'm saying? So we talk about morals in the abstract, but in reality, it's messy. It's never theoretical.
I don't disagree that it's not always clear cut, but that has to do with like a practical issue, not necessarily the principled issue. And like when it comes to like a form of utilitarianism, everything is gonna boggle down to where the increase of well-being or some type of societal happiness. So essentially,
no, but I can be contradictory. No, because
not
like
necessarily.
I said, yeah,
right. Because
I can certainly be contradictory.
Because essentially like the one principle you will always have, right? It will be the one to maximize well-being. That's the one principle you always have. That's
right,
but
except I'm not a machine. I'm a human being, and I'm certainly going to hold contradictory positions because humans are not machines. And so, while I may believe in general that utilitarianism makes sense, I might decide, fuck it, it's better for me than it is for the large number of people, and I'm more important than those people, and I'm going to do it for myself. So I certainly can see holding both of those positions contradictorily, because humans aren't logical. We're emotional. We don't follow logical patterns. And so if you expect them to, you're never going to get success. You're never going to have what you want. You have to expect humans to be contradictory and emotional and non-logical.
What were you gonna say, Brooks?
I think what I was gonna say. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Sorry.
Give me 1 second. All right.
Okay.
What I was gonna say was that like, if it all boils down to the net increase in utility, and that's how one kind of like administers like moral, weight or value pertaining to actions, you can't be contradictory with respect to that, because a contradiction entails that there's like if that's like the foundation for your moral system, and then if you hold a contradictory foundation, then it's like, what exactly is the moral system then? Right.
That's my point. Humans don't hold moral systems. They're a mess. They're contradictory. They change their mind. They change things for the moment. You're making an assumption that humans have a belief and they follow that belief single-mindedly. They don't. They're a mess. They hold contradictory positions. Their situational morals change, and that's humanity.
I'm not saying that we. I'm not saying I do think people contradict themselves all the time. I'm not saying that they don't.
Right.
I'm saying that we shouldn't.
No. I say we should. You know why? Because humans are. We should, because otherwise we would be acting. We would be acting non-human-like.
Wait. That seems like
What's the utility in that?
That's my point is, you can't go by these theoretical constructs. Don't work with humans, because humans do not follow rational patterns of behavior and thought. And if you expect them to, you're expecting them to not behave like a human.
Wait, but that sounds like a pragmatic issue. That that doesn't tell me if there's something wrong with operating in like some principle like way. Like, what's wrong with the principles themselves?
No, nothing's wrong with principles. What I'm saying is we'll codify them in laws, and then things have to change or modify or mutate. But you can't say we're going to base everything on utilitarianism. You can't do that in human society. You can say we're going to do these things for utilitarianism in this situation. We're going to do this. It's going to have to be a hodgepodge of things. Sometimes they're contradictory. Sometimes they're different. Otherwise, you're going to have a
the reason because you the earlier example you gave that like if something happens to your wife, you would be like you wouldn't care if it brings net utility, you would just do it, right? But you would still you said you would still view it as like morally wrong. It doesn't seem
no. It would not be morally wrong. It would be completely morally justified, but it would not be a base of utilitarian principle. I would feel no guilt, no remorse. It was going to be completely justified for me to kill that person.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say the issue. Okay, I understand now. So the issue.
The thing is, I would hold two contradictory beliefs.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to kill that person, but that's not in the best interest of society. But tough luck, I don't care. So it'd be contradictory.
Right. So, but then the issue, then you have conflicting moral system where it becomes the case where you value and you don't value the increase of well-being, and that essentially your moral system is meaningless, right?
No, it's not meaningless. It's situational, okay? In that situation, and the point is, that's what I'm saying, is that humans are always going to do that, okay? We are not going to follow logical structure would mean that we would then not be humans. Humans are always going to have simultaneously contradictory beliefs, and we have to deal with that.
So I understand.
I actually have a contention with that, though. Like, I don't think that's entailed by being a human.
Oh, I think it is. I think humans are emotional, and they are not always logical. And to expect a human to be completely logical and consistent is expecting someone to act non-human-like. But
is that logically impossible, though?
No. What I'm saying is that humans don't make decisions on logic all the time. They base things on intuition. They base things on gut. They base things on hearsay. Do you want to live in a society? Is a question where every decision is based on some logical structure and that's non-contradictory. And if you do,
absolutely.
Okay, I don't, because that would mean our society would become something other than the messy human thing that it is, and that would radically change us as a society.
And from what I take it, you're operating under the presumption that changing of the human nature would be some negative thing, right?
Yeah, I would.
What's the argument? What's the argument for that, though?
I would say that in our evolution, things like our emotion, the reason we have emotions and the reason we have these gut feelings are they've helped us survive. And I would say that I still think they're adaptive and needed, and I still think that if we did not use them, as how messy they are and contradictory they are, we would become, like Star Trek Vulcans, where I don't think that society or operating on that principle would be good. It would be sort of a transhuman society where we'd be something different than what we are today, and I don't personally think that would be better. And
operating in a logical way just means you don't contradict yourself. So I don't think everything you've just said is entailed by operating with respect to logic.
Well, humans, you do realize humans are not logical, and we don't follow strictly logic. No human being does.
Actually, I don't even know what that means, to be honest.
Well, I'm saying
I don't know what
humans do not make decisions or think through things. We hold contradictory beliefs. We don't. We hold. We believe in logical fallacies. We do all sorts of things that are inconsistent, and that makes us human by the definition that we are human. We are.
Wait, but
I don't see how that follows.
That begs the question. Like I think what I'm trying to ascertain as to how does being a human entail that we don't operate in a logical way. Like I don't get that. That's the part I'm stuck on.
Right, because we can conceive of a human being who acts strictly in a logical way.
Right, and would you
i.e. me and Purdy.
And would you say that that person would act in a normal human way? When if you watch their entire behavior, would they seem like an average human? I'll say average American because I know Americans. Or would they seem different? I would postulate they would be different, and they would actually be acting weird, quote unquote, weird to us, and that they would not be acting like a normal human, quote unquote. If they followed that.
Yeah, of course, but that's assuming that like normal presupposing the common sense of way of acting, right?
Right. And what I'm saying
but then you're just appealing. Yeah,
right.
Then you're just. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's what I'm saying. The messy humanity that we have today is in many ways better than a pure logical way of being. That's what I'm saying.
Better in accordance to what?
That's a good question.
Because if you're saying it's better than in a logical way, well, what do you mean by better? Because it assumes that you have.
Because what's implicit is that there's some standard in which you're like operating in a non-logical way will get us closer to that standard.
Yeah, the standard is that would be less of a radical change as to what humanity is. I think better is keeping humanity emotional and irrational and closer to the biological organism that we are and the way that we react to things. It would be, when I say worse or different, we would be something that we would not recognize as human compared to today. And that would, again, it would be more of a transhuman state. And we would look at that and say, are they even the same group, as we are?
So let me ask this question, because this might actually bring some clarity. Is there some sort of conflict with the idea of a human and logic and rationality? Are those things conflicted? Are those contradictions?
Yes, because yeah.
Okay, that
yeah, but let me explain why. Because humans.
Okay.
Because your life as a human, your experience as a human, not everything that you do, even though you might strive towards rationality and logic, you aren't always rational and logic. For example, you go to work and you have a stress response, fight or flight response, that is not logical because you are not under actual stress. You are not your survival is not at risk. However, this is a holdover from our evolution, yet you're having the same physiological response. It is completely illogical. It is unnecessary. It is something that in a logical world we would not have because you are not under a threat up to your life, but it is something you experience and it makes you human. It makes you the human that you are today. But in a logical world, we would get rid of that, right? Because that is not something that makes any sense at all.
Wait, what do you think logic means?
What do you mean what I think logic means? If you're talking about whether a premise follows from another premise, is one definition of logic. What I'm talking about, when I say logic, I'm saying your endocrine system puts you in situations where you have feelings that are in conflict with reality. In other words, in reality, you are not being threatened, yet you feel like you're being threatened. And that is a contradiction. I'm calling it illogical.
I don't see that's not a contradiction. That's not a contradiction.
Of course it is.
No, it's not.
You're not under threat.
They're in two different senses.
So hold on.
Hold on. That doesn't exist to save your life. It is not there to deal with work stress. It is there because it is your biological system is there to make sure you don't get eaten by a prey or a predator.
Yeah. So
there is zero chance at work that you are going to lose your life because your boss is mad at you. Zero chance. And therefore you're still having that response. Your biology is at odds with the reality.
So I think what's happening here is that like you might have like a fundamental misunderstanding of what logic is, because like logic just deals with like contradictions. That's essentially what it is.
Right, but I think he believes that like the idea, like let's use the example you gave us, right? To know that you're not really in danger, but to feel that you are, you view that as contradictory. But truly, that isn't, because the contradiction would actually. Well, no, it wouldn't be. Wait, I can demonstrate it, right? The reason why what a contradiction is, right? It's you take a certain proposition, and you add a negation to that, right?
Right.
So and the things so when you say something like you know that you're in danger, and then we take another one and say that you feel that you're in danger, those are two different propositions. Those are two different propositions.
Exactly.
What do you call when someone has a thought that is in contradiction to reality?
Well, you're presupposing it's contradiction.
Okay, so here's the question. I
So
understand
I think
pure logic. I understand.
I think
theoretical
it's
symbolic logic.
What,
I'm not talking that. I'm talking about if I have a panic attack and my thought in my head is I am dying. That is illogical because I am not dying. It is a contradiction to what's actually happening. The real statement is I am having a panic attack and I am having these symptoms and these are not going to kill me. But that's not what my brain says. And so when I'm talking about logical, I'm not talking about just, A, not A. I'm talking about contradictory feelings and thoughts that are held at the same time. That just don't make sense.
Do you mean like conflicting feelings and thoughts?
Contradictory, not conflicting. So if you're having a panic attack and you think you are dying, but you in reality are not dying, what do you call that? It's not conflicting.
I mean, I would call that I'll call that conflicting because contradiction has a very discrete definition.
Right. Okay. But it's dying or not dying, right? Either it's a
right.
statement of I am dying or I'm not dying.
Yes.
I am dying, and the reality is you are not dying. So to me it is a logical contradiction. You're feeling like you're dying, but you're not dying.
So
it's almost there. They're almost there. So the true contradiction would be, I feel like I'm dying, and then it's negation, which is, it is not the case that I feel like I'm dying. If both of those things hold true simultaneously, then that's a contradiction. But if you say, I feel like I'm dying, and then in reality you're not actually dying, it's not a contradiction actually, because those are two different propositions. In order for something to be a contradiction, it has to be the same proposition and that proposition's negation.
But that's from a logic. I understand that. That's from a logical standpoint. What I'm saying is,
but then when you're invoking,
but
that's the issue. Like, you're invoking contradictions, right? When you invoke this type of language, it presupposes what we're talking about. We're talking about logic. It presupposes logic, and what logic is kind of deals with contradictions. So that's why we have kind of an issue with what you're saying.
I hear what you're saying. So you're talking about only thoughts, nothing else. Holding two thoughts at the same time. Is that what you're talking about?
No, not thoughts.
Well, it could be beliefs.
Give me an example of a thought and an emotion that are logical contradictions.
A thought. Okay, so the same one that are a contradiction.
That are in contradiction, yes.
Oh,
not two thoughts.
I don't think they would be in two different senses. I don't think they would be, because again.
Yes, of course there can be.
No, because the example you gave, right? The example you gave earlier was that you feel that you're in danger, but you're actually not, right? The thought would be you're actually not, but you just feel you're in danger. I don't think that's a contradiction.
I see the problem we're having here. You're talking logic in the sort of mathematical logic, symbolic logic, left brain construct of A, not A. I get it, okay? What I'm trying to say is that human beings also think on a level that is not verbal, okay? And there can be contradictions, I use contradictions, between emotions and thoughts that are opposite, complete opposite, where you have a thought that you believe to be true, and you have a feeling that you believe to be true, and they are the opposite of each other. They are the A, not A, but one's a thought, one's a feeling, is what I'm saying. And you're talking about two logical thoughts that are conflicting. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we have a biology where a lot of our life is hormonal, okay? So you can have a feeling, for example, of I am attracted to that man sexually, and a thought of I am not attracted to that man sexually. And those are logically conflicting because you clearly are emotionally, but mentally you're saying you're not.
Do you think that the thought is not in accordance to reality? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
I think
exactly
that's what he's trying to say.
Yeah, that's what exactly what I'm saying. Is that thought is at odds with the reality. The reality is your hormonal.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Body.
Like that.
Yeah.
See that makes sense. Like,
that's what I'm saying. And so what I'm saying is that we humans do that all the time.
Right. Yeah, but that's not a logical contradiction, though. In the sense,
I hear what you're saying, but humans don't think. Everything in human life is not based on thoughts and statements. That's what I'm trying to say. Human life has a lot of other. We have a whole different part of our bodies that do not operate on verbal thought at all, and yet they control a lot of our behavior. So you can't just say thinking and morals, because you got to factor in the nonverbal elements of being a human. Otherwise, we won't be human. We will be machines that work on A, not A, and that's it. That's my point I'm trying to get at least. So if you want to live in a world where it's all based on logic, then it means we have no emotions. They never enter into play. They never...
Wait, hold on. I don't see how that follows. I don't see why you can't have logically consistent emotions or logically consistent thoughts and feelings.
Because you have no control over your emotions. That's why. There are people that can control their emotions with training and autonomic nervous system, but mostly emotions are subconscious and they are not under your voluntary conscious control, the amygdala.
I think I know the issue.
What's the issue?
I think I know the issue. There's like an equivocation on the word logic. So whenever he invokes it, Ferdy, we think he's saying it in our sense, but he's not actually saying it in our sense.
And that's
what we're not following.
Yeah, I've said that over and over. I'm not talking about a logical construct of a premise and then a statement that follows. Okay. I'm not talking about that.
No, I figured. Okay. So when we say that like humans can still be logical and still be humans, we mean it in like the formal logic sense, not in the sense of like having a belief that's not in accordance to reality.
And here's my question.
Sense?
Right, I get that. But how do you then factor in the emotional side that, because to be logical, you would have to then override with thought the feelings that you are having that contradict. You see what I'm saying?
Are you saying, wait, hold on, are you using our form of logic or yours?
Your form of logic.
Okay, our form of logic has nothing to do with like abandoning emotions and stuff.
It does. Because as a human being, let me explain why. I'll explain why. You can logically walk through an argument, but if your gut feeling, emotional feeling, disagrees with the logic of the argument, how is that going to affect your behavior? Are you going to override it with the logical thought, and say, you know what, I don't care how I feel, we're going to operate under this logical premise? Is that what's going to happen?
Hold on. I got to digest, like,
okay.
Because logic and, like, when logic's used in more than one way, I have
to
decipher.
Hold on. I have an issue here. Hold on. I have quite an issue. Hold on. So in the sense that we're talking about, right? You said emotion, right? Take any emotion or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me think about it this way, right? Yeah. I don't see how it's possible to be both happy and not happy, both at the same time in the same sense.
You absolutely can be happy and not happy. Okay.
Both at the same time in the same sense?
Can be yes. Yeah, absolutely you can be happy and not happy. There are people who have blunted emotions.
That's a contradiction.
There are people who can't feel, say, the depths of happiness, so they are not happy. But if you ask them, "Are you happy?" they intellectually think that they are happy, and they would say, "I'm happy."
But then you just. Yeah, go ahead, Russ. I think you'll.
Well, you have to define what happy is.
Yeah.
Are you saying Are you saying that happy is the chemical changes that happen in the body that give you the emotion of happy? Is that how you're defining happy?
I'm just talking about the subjective experience of being happy.
But,
Whatever
that's my point.
pleasurable.
The subjective experience. That's what I'm trying to explain. The subjective experience of being happy is a combination of the emotional feelings and the thoughts. They're two different things, but it's not just the thinking I feel I am happy. It's not the statement of I believe I am happy. It is also the feeling inside your body that you feel happy, and those two can be at odds with each other.
Russ, you were gonna say something.
So
it was about. I think it was about because you were saying that like the depth of the happiness.
Your guy's point, though. Yeah, if you're talking just thought, statements about reality, and the logic that follows statement A to statement B, is that what you guys are talking about?
I think at the base level, we're just thinking about kind of like the three laws of logic.
Yeah, I know, right, but it's all thought-based, right? It's all reasoning, it's all verbal, it's all A to
presumably,
B, right?
Actually, the laws of logic would be universal.
But the laws of logic, this is the point I'm trying to make, is that those laws of logic apply when you're talking about thought and thinking. They do not apply to the emotional side of humanity because those are not logical, and they can be contradictory. You can think through a process and say your thought process is illogical. You didn't follow premise to subject. You had a logical fallacy here. You can do all that. You can't do that to the autonomic nervous system and the feelings that you have. That doesn't work that way. And so what I'm saying, humans are more than just the thought process. We have this whole autonomic nervous system that actually influences our behavior in ways that pure thoughts that are in addition to the thought. I get what you guys are saying, but I'm saying if you just went by pure logical thought, you wouldn't be human.
Wait, hold on, because the thing is, like, logic is not like, you can't think of it as like a process, right? Like, logic is just a brute contingency. It's kind of just like a foundation in which we built up our other like abstract systems, like
but for thought,
mathematics.
But for things that are left brain.
No, it's not. It's not even for thought, though. That's how we like the laws of logic are universal, which means they apply to reality.
Right. Yeah.
They're descriptions.
It wouldn't be just thoughts, because like a computer is either a computer or not a computer, right? And that's something that would exist in reality, and it's not a thought, right?
But a human being can be both happy and not happy at the same time.
In the same sense, I don't see how that's even possible. That's
I'll
actually
explain how that sense, because it depends how you define what happiness is, right? If you're saying, can a person have a physical sensation of being happy and not a physical sensation, I would say you're correct. You can't have that. Okay. Can a person have a thought? I am happy. I am not unhappy. No, they can't. But they can have a thought that says I'm happy or I'm unhappy, and a physical sensation that says the opposite.
You see,
and
okay, I see.
Hold on. As a human being, they are in an illogical state because part of them is positive and part of them is negative. And as a human, they would say that they would be conflicted, and it would be weird. I mean, I guess it's my point. I get what you guys are saying.
I spot the issue. Okay, yeah, I spot the issue. Yeah, because the thing is, like, I would say that's not a contradiction because they're in two separate senses. One's physical, the other one's mental.
Yeah, but my point is that those two things, though, we experience happiness. Those two aren't separate. When you talk about happiness, thoughts and feelings are intermingled. You do not separate out your thoughts and your feelings about happiness. It is, you combine the two, and that sum total is your concept of happiness.
I'm working with your hypothetical. I don't even think like I think happiness is purely subjective. Like, I don't think if you're brain dead, I don't think you're gonna be happy. I don't think that's possible.
No, you can't be. But also, if you have no hormonal system, you can't be happy either. If you don't have your endocrine system, you can't be happy because you won't have the feelings. So you can have the thought that you're happy, but you can't be happy because you do not have the emotional response that is happy.
No, like hold on, Freddie. We actually agree with that notion. It's the thing that we disagree with respect to logic is that, like, if you feel like you're happy and simultaneously it's not the case that you feel like you're happy in the same sense, right? Not one's not feeling and the other one's not like some thought, right? Like in the same sense, it's literally like it's negation, then yeah, that would be contradictory. But if it's like, if you have the thought that you're happy, but actually feel like you're not, that's not a contradiction. That's actually totally
yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Okay, yes.
Say that again. Hold on. Say that again. Say that again so I can get that.
Yeah, sure. So, like, in the same sense, like, if you have a feeling that you're happy, well, simultaneously, it's not the case that you feel like you're happy. That would be a contradiction. That would be logically impossible, right?
Right.
But if you feel like you're if you have the thought that you feel like you're happy, but you actually don't feel like you're happy,
right?
Then it's not a contradiction, because those are going to be in two different domains. One's a feeling, one's a thought.
Okay, and I would argue that I hear your point, and I understand that, and I get that. But I would say that they're not two different domains. The concept of being happy is the combination of both. You can't separate the thought and the feeling as each one of those is happy. It's the combination that is.
Wait, let me ask you if this is the same sentence, okay?
Sure.
I feel like I'm happy. I have a thought that I feel like I'm happy. Is that the same thing?
No, not at all.
Yeah, exactly. That's why even if those two things are conflicted, it won't create a contradiction.
I don't see that, because if I tell you, if my thought is I'm happy, but I'm not feeling happy, maybe it's because I've been depressed my whole life. I don't really know what happy is. I mean, I'm just thinking, how the.
No, I got you. No, but it's like, the thing is, the reason why I asked you if those two sentences are the same or even have the same meaning, right? If they had the same meaning, then yeah, it would be a contradiction. But we understand that having a feeling and having a thought are kind of like different, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and the very fact that you identified that those two things are distinct, that's why even if they're in like conflict, or they appear to be in conflict, it won't generate a contradiction, because a contradiction requires those two things to be in the same domain. They have to have the same meaning.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. It's the pure A, not A, and it has to be the exact same thing. It's this and the opposite. I get that.
Yeah, exactly.
So now let's take the next step, which is when you're talking about humans being logical, what do you mean by that? Do you mean just their thought processes being logical?
Well, I don't know what it means to say humans are being logical. I don't know. I don't know what the hell that even means.
I thought you guys said that. I thought you were talking about in a world.
No. It's because you were saying they can't be, and I didn't even know what that meant either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What I meant by that is that humans are contradictory. Maybe not logical is the bad word. That we hold contradictory beliefs, contradictory feelings to our thoughts, and they're not congruent, and we don't. In addition to, we also fall prey to logical fallacies and all sorts of other things. But
at the same time, you could also say that humans simultaneously don't do those things as well. There's examples of humans that don't do that, right?
No, I think that I would be hard-pressed to find a human being who has not ever had an experience where their emotions and their thoughts were not in line. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
sure.
I think that
wait, we mean having, like, well, the thing is that I've already taken care of that. That's not what we mean by contradictory. Like, if we have beliefs like, like it's wrong to kill an animal, and then it's like it's not the case that it's wrong to kill an animal. Like, that would be a contradictory belief.
Right.
So, like, I think, like, you have to be careful, because, like, if you make this universally quantified statement saying that, like all humans have, like, these specific traits, when it's actually the case that, like, that might be just a subset of all the humans, then we just be committing the composite fallacy.
No, I hear you, but I need to be clear on what we're talking about as far as the logic. If you're saying that,
I'm sorry, composition fallacy. Wow, I said composite.
What I'm trying to say is that I don't think there's any human that has ever lived that has had congruence, constant congruence in their thoughts and their feelings.
Can you conceive of a, like, is it, let me ask this question.
I can't conceive of it.
Wait, is it impossible for a human to operate with respect to that?
At our current state of evolution, yes. Because,
you think?
Here's why. Because there are reflexive, inborn elements to humanity that are not under your conscious control that will conflict with your conscious thought. Human being has evolved past that.
We could just use the example you gave, right? Because the example that you gave is like of someone who knows that they're not in danger, right? This is the type of thinking they would have, but they feel they are in danger, right?
Right.
Is that conceivable?
Of course.
But then that answers the question.
No, I guess maybe I misunderstood what you were saying. I was thinking the opposite. I thought you were asking, is there ever a person who's never had that conflict? And
who's never?
There has been a person who's never had that conflict. Yeah, sorry, I was answering the wrong question.
I don't see why. I don't see why ethical egoists wouldn't fall under that.
Because you have no control. You don't have any conscious control over how you feel. That's my point. Is that your feelings arise subconsciously, and since you can't control them, and they are not based on any kind of logical thought or process, they are irrational in many ways. The emotions. I don't think that a human being has ever lived where they're always congruent. That's what I'm saying.
I think you're using like logical as like a form of doing
We're not
something.
talking logical anymore. We've gone past that. You didn't ask the question whether a human being is logical.
No, because you mentioned like emotions or something that's not logical or rational, right?
They're not logical, yes.
But the thing is that like it can, right? By instance.
No. You're telling me you have never cared for someone and hated them at the same time. And there's maybe two different domains you want to call that,
that's not. I've never both cared and not cared for someone both at the same time in the same sense, because that's a contradiction. That's logically impossible.
No, I don't think so. It's not at the same time.
Well, it is.
Right.
It's just by definition.
It's not at the same time. I hear what you're saying, but it oscillates, right? So it may be that 1 minute you care for them, and then the next second I don't care for them. So I hear what you're saying.
That makes sense.
But it oscillates. It's not like you have it simultaneously. But if you're like, I love this person and I want to be with them the rest of my life. I feel the love. I hate or I don't love them. They're dead to me. Humans have feelings that do not follow rules of logic, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, but when you say, I agree with that. When the
wait, no, that's not true though.
Wait. No, what I mean by that, I agree that you could have someone that in let's say like you love, and then a second later you not love them, right? That's I can conceive of that. I can conceive of that.
That's what I'm saying.
That doesn't itself contain a contradiction.
Right. That's what. Okay, I hear what you're saying. We are not, again, machines. You do not simultaneously hold both of those at the same time. But if you vacillate back and forth, if you go back and forth, it is effectively like holding them at the same time, because your subjective experience is, I feel both at the same time, even though you really don't. You're moving back and forth between the two.
Okay, got you.
Okay.
So as soon as you posit that you can't experience those things simultaneously, like feeling hate for a person, and it's not the case to feel hate for the person at the same time, then you acknowledge that humans operate in a logical way.
No. How is it?
Because that's literally what operating in the domain of logic means.
You're missing my point. While on a biological level, maybe you're switching back and forth, but your subjective experience, if you were to ask somebody, they would say, I feel both at the same time, even though they might not technically, it may be moving back and forth, but the subjective experience would be, I love them and I don't love them. And think about how humans are. People hold contradictory feelings. I love them and I don't love them. What do I do? They experience that. That is a fact.
When someone, but the thing is that I think the reason why someone says that is because they're talking about two different senses. Like when I say I don't love my mom in the case that she's grounding me, but I do love her because she cares for me. These are two different senses. But I think I think you're presupposing like if we're talking about in the same sense, that's not possible.
No, but I hear you. But what I'm saying is that you're talking about thoughts. I'm talking about the endocrine, the biological. So you do realize, for example, here's a good example: the physical reaction to sexual arousal and the physical reaction to like a stress response are virtually identical. Dilation of the pupils, blood vessels expand. You're basically dumping epinephrine and other chemicals in. So it's not the physical reaction, it's often how we process that and the contextual clues around that. It's what I'm saying is we're complicated, and a human being often can't tell the difference between, their physiological arousal and what the cause is. That's how our brain works, and our brain does not work by logical connections. You guys are trying to look at like statements of like A, not A, and I'm trying to say that human beings don't always process their internal experience in that way.
I mean, yeah, that doesn't. I don't have any contentions with that. I can agree that.
So here's my question then.
Don't internalize it.
So when you talk about being in a logical world, what does that mean to you? I think, didn't you say that?
It means things are what they are and they're not what they're not.
And again, when you have subjective experience where you can't tell the difference, how does that exist in that world?
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry.
So when I have this arousal feeling, how do I know what it really is? I mean, it is a physiological arousal, logically, but is it love? Is it hate? How do I know what that is in your world?
Oh, I mean, logic isn't like some it's not like science where it's like some process to find truth. So there's a truth to the matter. Like this arousal you have, like has some sort of antecedent condition, whatever that condition is.
We don't know that. We don't understand that fully right now. That's my point.
Right.
And so,
yeah, we don't know that, but we can actually conclude where it would be, let's say, for example, be something like love or not love, right? Love or not love. It could be either love or something else other than love, right? We can come to that conclusion.
Well, but again, so define. No, because we have to define what love or not love is. If we're defining,
take whatever you mean.
Because love is complicated. Wait, here, listen to me. If we're defining love as the physiological arousal but not the thought, then love and hate could be the exact same physiological arousal, and there would be zero distinction between the two. It would be a feeling, and then the higher brain then processes that, whether it's love, hate, fear, whatever. My point is that how does that follow a logical set of reasoning gets to what that is? I just don't understand where the logic comes in when you get to the emotional part.
The logic will just tell you, like, look, like, you have this state of arousal, right?
Right.
Is it also not the case that you're in the state of arousal?
No, we clearly are in the state of arousal. Logically,
yeah.
You're aroused. So
that's literally where the logic comes in.
So how do I distinguish which state of arousal am I in?
Oh, that's not a logic thing. That's a separate issue. That's like an empirical thing.
So when someone says I love them and I am angry at them, I guess that's not a contradiction. That's two separate things. Yeah.
If they say I love them and it's not the case that I love them, we all know that's literally impossible.
I don't know if that's literally impossible when it comes to emotions. I think that at the same time you might be correct, but if they're vacillating back and forth,
hold on.
Subjective experience is both. That's my point.
So whenever I say like you love them, and then it's also not the case that you love them. We
Right.
always mean that simultaneously.
Okay,
Like,
that's my
yeah.
point. And that's my point is that when it comes to emotions, we don't work like that. It's like you don't. Come on. You have there are subjective experiences when you have felt conflicting emotions simultaneously, apparently simultaneously. I mean, it's not logical. How can I feel this and this at the same time? It doesn't make any sense, but you do. That's my point, is that the nonverbal side doesn't, it allows you to have those contradictions because maybe you're misinterpreting them, maybe, because you're not following any kind of left brain logical thing, you're just feeling. And therefore you're not ascribing am I having it exactly this moment or not this moment? And
I mean, because the thing is, like, temporality is like very important when it comes to like determining like what's possible or impossible. So I can agree with the notion that a person can feel love, and it's not the case that they feel love for someone, like kind of like one after the other, oscillating, if you will. I think you said that prior.
Yeah,
that totally makes sense. But if in this moment right now, like if time were to freeze, and someone takes this, let's say someone was like outside of time, right? I know that sounds incoherent,
I
but
hear what you're saying. You can't. It's impossible to have both. I get that. What I'm saying in a practical sense, that's not how the world works. And so I guess my question is,
wait,
it doesn't work that way.
Wait, if you're saying that's not how the world works, then you're going to have to actually demonstrate a case where someone at the same time feels love for someone, and it's not the case.
You misunderstood. You can't slice time like that in reality. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you, the statement. You can't both have both at the same second. But you can't slice up time like that. You're looking at a person over a period of time, and they're going to say, I feel both, even though they may be oscillating back and forth. But to them, they feel both. That's
there's nothing contradictory about that. It's totally legit, yeah.
Yeah, but then how to the external viewer, they are holding contradictory positions. I love them and I don't love them.
Well, well, if they mean that they hold contradictory positions, if what they mean by that is that they're oscillating between two different mental states, strictly logically speaking, there is no contradiction.
I hear you, but I don't think they know if they oscillating. That's my point. They don't know that.
Wait, what happened?
They won't know that. To them, they just feel it at the same time. They don't know they're oscillating back and forth. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like they don't experience that. No one's going to tell you, I'm moving back and forth. They're going to say, I feel it at the same time, even though they may be moving back and forth. I guess what I'm trying to, when you talk about emotions, when you slice it down to the biological element, yeah, it's going to follow laws of logic, but humans don't perceive things logical all the time. They don't.
I think Ferdy, you don't have any contentions with that, do you? Is he still here?
I think he is.
Yeah, there's no contention.
But to the outside observer,
if that's what you meant the whole time, we have no issue with that. We actually agree.
That's what I've been trying to. Yes, that's what I meant. Is that, but from the outside perspective, that person would say, I love them and I don't love them, and you would say that's impossible. You can't do that. But yet they do that all the time.
No, because then we would just ask, it's like, what do you mean when you say that? Because like if they mean it in the literal like same sense, then yeah, there'd be some contradiction. But you ever been in a situation where they would say, I both at the same time
love them and don't love them, and I don't know what to do. They would be in this crisis mode. Or
then you would
I hate
just
them,
ask them, what do they mean by it?
I also don't hate them. You've never experienced ambivalence about a situation emotionally, that you felt an emotion about something and didn't feel the emotion about that, and I mean, you were probably moving back and forth in time in reality. 1 second you feel angry, then you don't feel angry. But I don't think humans perceive it as moving back and forth. They just feel like it's happening all at the same time, even though you're right. Logically, it's not. It's a perception of I feel these both contradictory at the same time.
I got you. Yeah,
That's
all you
what
have
I'm
to
trying
do,
say.
like in that kind of instance, like if you're trying to, like, I mean, I speak for myself, but I think Freddie agrees. Like, we would just ask them, like, what do they mean by I love them, and it's not the case that I don't love them. Like, what do you mean when you say that? And then once we get the meaning, if we're able to decipher what the meaning is, and there's like
Right.
no conflict with that, then we can say, okay, that totally makes sense. You know.
Yeah. Well,
Because they could be using like some sort of like proprietary language that needs a little bit of like dissecting.
well, but and that's my point, though, is that humans as a species don't do that. They're messy. They will not. They will blur something that an internal
No,
experience. So
I think I agree with you. I think a better way of saying it possibly is that like humans aren't going to say that whole fucking thing. They're just going to use
Right.
language that fucking sums up what they mean like very quickly.
Right.
Yeah. And at face value it would seem contradictory. It seems contradictory, but if we kind of like extrapolate as to what they mean, then it could actually not be a contradiction. That can be totally coherent.
I agree. But it will still look like it's contradictory, and humans will still. I don't see how we can live in a world, going back to the whole thing, where everybody holds non-contradictory positions, maybe mentally, thought-wise, but I don't see how we can ever live in a world where...
No, they can hold seemingly contradictory positions, but if we decipher what it is they actually mean, and we get literal, they can't literally hold contradictory positions.
Yeah, no,
is that something you agree with?
I agree with that. And that's...
Yeah.
Cool. I understand that completely. What I was talking about is not the literal, when you get down to dissecting what it is, but when you get to humans who are sloppy and messy and who use imprecise terms and who are experiencing feelings that they can't figure out the precise origin of, logic doesn't work. I mean, it does work in a theoretical sense, but no human being is going to say, this second I feel this, now this second I feel this. Now they're never going to do that. It's just never going to happen.
Just like we agree for the most part. Just like I'm not going to tell you what to do, but like
right.
We can't say things like logic doesn't work because logic isn't a process. It's just a description of reality. We can't say logic doesn't work. It's like saying let's say I met you.
Actually, the best thing, numbers don't work. It's kind of weird to say, like, the number 1 doesn't work. It's not, there's nothing about the number 1. It's not a function. It's a description of, like, a thing. I guess, would that be a good example?
So I mean, that'd be better than what the fuck I was going to say.
No, okay, so let me then be more precise then. Humans will never be fully logical. Humans will always be contradictory. Maybe that's better.
See, the thing is, but everything is logical, though. Like, we live in a world that abides by logic, so
we do.
We
I agree with that when it comes to thought. But in your subjective experience about how you experience your emotions, your subjective experience, not how the emotions work on a physical level, your subjective experience, I would argue that no, you do not experience it.
I have 2 pushbacks to that.
Okay.
Like, one, I'm like a physicalist, so like your subjective experience, I think, is like directly.
Shit. Really? You're ascribing to physicalism?
Yeah, I'm somewhat a physicalist, yeah, but
okay.
I think because for me, I think your subjective experiences are a direct byproduct of physical phenomena.
Like an emergent, like an emergent property.
It is.
Yeah.
It is an emergent property of your.
Wait, hold on.
Right.
So
okay.
The laws of logic don't only work in the domain of the physical, also works in the domain of like, because like even if you're not a physicalist, it also works in the domain of like the hypothetical. It works in the domain of like whatever consciousness is. It's like that's a separate domain. It also applies to there as well, because the laws of logic have to deal with like all possible worlds.
So let me ask a question. you don't think it's possible then for someone to take a psychedelic drug and experience two contradictory mental states at the same time? A and not A. I experienced one within the universe and complete isolation simultaneously. You don't think that that's possible in a psychedelic experience? I'm just asking because that seems like it would be a logical contradiction. Yet I'm sure people have experienced these subjective experiences of two things that logically can't exist at the same time.
Yeah. So it would be more like, let's say, I experience X and I experience not X both at the same time in the same sense.
But I get it. I'm already conceding that. I get it when it gets down. I get it. I'm trying to explain to you that since human beings can't get down to that level, they mush things together. The person that took the psychedelic trip would swear to you that they felt both at one with the cosmos and all alone at the same time, and you just don't understand it. Even though they could never have done that, they would feel like they did that. That's my point. And you don't think that's an accurate statement of reality? You don't think a human being could ever experience that? I've talked to people that experience stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because the reason why I wouldn't like believe that, the reason why is because like a contradiction is false in every possible world, right?
Right, but
so
of course. But
to say I can concede of something that is false in every possible world, that's like, what are you even saying? Like, I don't even know. You're essentially just saying nonsense.
Who, me?
No, like the person. That person.
Right, absolutely. I agree, but guess what? They believe that they experience both those contradictions at the same time. In their being, they believe they've done it. I've talked to people that had weird, psychedelic experiences who claim to have experienced contradictory things at the same time. My point is, we know in science-wise, if we were to measure, say, the brain activity, it would come down to there's no way to have. If we knew the neurons that would fire and do that, we would measure that. We would see that they would not both be active and not active at the same time. I get that, but I'm saying the subjective human experience, we tend to throw things like that out when it comes to emotions and things like that, because we are not good on the emotional or the other level of getting to that. I don't know if I'm articulating that. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I agree with you. You can't hold it A and not A, but humans don't
realize that,
experience that. Yeah, or can't even articulate that, or will swear that they have held contradictory things, and we don't have the tools to measure, for example, whether they did or did not, but they will swear.
Right. Yeah. So, but the thing, yeah, okay, yeah, I can conceive of someone who could swear to you that they can. We do have dialytheists who think that there are some true contradictions, but like, I can conceive of that, but I don't think that what they're conceiving is true.
Of course not. Because if you were to measure their neurological activity, you could probably prove it to them, but you're not going to convince them of it they're going to feel like they did experience it. That's my point.
Yeah, but that's a separate issue from that.
It's not a separate issue. That's my whole point, is that you're looking at the true nature of reality, and what I'm saying is that you're never going to get humans are always going to have this messy element to them, or we won't be human. We'll be something else. We will be some other entity that is not. We would not be recognizable as the humans that we are today, is what I'm saying. We will be transhuman. That's my whole point. Is that the illogic, some elements that are illogical are fundamental to being a human as we understand what a human is today. Mm. That's all I'm saying. And that if you were to change that, we would maybe look at them and not recognize them as what a human is today.
Mm. I think we beat this way too deep.
We did, I know. I appreciate it, though.
But that's fun. Yeah, but I think we have like 2 questions. Let me see if...
Hey Dan, what do you think of humans? Do you have a positive opinion of humans?
Yes.
According to Dan, a person can be illogical sometimes, and that will altogether get them labeled as illogical. But if a person is logical, sometimes, that doesn't get them labeled logical. I don't quite understand. If somebody has to be logical all the time to be logical, can anybody be logical? And he's, I guess, making the claim that people aren't logical because
I think I can answer
they have
this.
contradictory systems of belief.
Wait, what?
And whatnot. I don't really see how being illogical sometimes gets you labeled illogical, and being logical sometimes doesn't get you labeled logical.
Let me see. I think there's a way to answer this, because I think the reason why someone will call the person who's being illogical categorically is because, like, I don't know if you're aware of the principle of explosion. So basically, like, when you contain a contradiction, your entire system explodes, like your entire philosophical system. And that's why you could categorize someone as illogical if they hold, like, only one contradiction, even if they hold one contradiction. But if they're logical, can you call them... Wait, what? I forgot the other part of the question. I forgot the other part, but...
what I'm saying is that, are we talking just thought, or are we talking human as a whole? Because humans are more than just our thoughts. Our internal experience that are not verbal are part of being human.
Well, so I don't think, like... I think you can, like, hold... like if a moral system shouldn't hold conflicting moral beliefs, right?
Right,
because
but
it
what
puts
about
them...
What about the so-called gut feeling?
Gut feeling versus what?
I'm just asking, does logic factor in to gut people's feelings?
It can, right? I mean, there's like...
Okay.
If you have like a gut feeling, you either have that gut feeling or you don't have that gut feeling, right?
Right, I got that. Right, but so I guess my question is that how can you be illogical without thought? I guess that's my question.
How can
you be illogical? Can you eliminate thought? Can you be illogical or logical? That's the question.
Can you be illogical without thoughts?
Correct.
Are you
Could
saying
your bodily sensations be follow the laws of logic or not? I guess that's what your bodily feelings.
I would say they're forced to, right?
Are they?
Yeah, they have to. Yeah, they have to follow because it has to be the case that, take away thoughts, right? Let's just talk about like a bottle, right? A bottle is either a bottle or not a bottle, and that's something that exists outside of my thoughts, right? That has to, if it's a bottle, then it's by definition a bottle. But if it's not a bottle, then what we mean by bottle, it's not that, right? And that's an example of logic.
I get that. But so, right, you can either have cancer or you don't have cancer. I get that.
Right.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking your subjective experience of your body, which is a combination of many, many things. Can that be illogical, I guess, or can that be contradictory?
So the feeling, this is like for strictly, like, let's say a subjective experience of emotion, right? We could take that, right?
Right.
I don't think that you can have the feeling of both X and not X, right? I don't think that's possible. But I think you can have it at different, like, you can have X and not X like a second later. I think that's possible.
I think you can have both, and here's why. And technically, you're right. Your biological systems cannot have X and not X. But an emotion, it is quite possible to be aroused physically, but yet sense it and not sense it. at the same time. And you would say, well, that's not a logical contradiction. And what I'm saying is that if you're only looking at the physical body, you're correct. It's not contradictory. But if you're looking at the subjective experience the person is experiencing, they will swear to you that they are afraid, not afraid, even though their biological markers for all those have not changed. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that emotions are complicated. They're not just a biological function. They are a combination of many, many different systems, and they can be illogical, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that. I don't think you can have. Yeah, I think this at this point is just going to be like. I know we beat this so much.
Hairs, I think. We're splitting hairs because you're right. You can't both be aroused and not aroused on a biological level. That is impossible. But that's not how emotions work.
But
you
I
can
think
be physically aroused, but not have the subjective experience.
Yeah, what? I think that's true for like emotions as well. I don't think you could be both happy and not happy both at the same time in the same sense.
But you it depends on how you measure what happiness is. That's my point.
Well,
right?
take any definition and apply it consistently in both cases. I don't like it doesn't matter what definition you use as long as you're using it in the same way.
Well, I would say that you can be both, because remember, if you're looking at just the physical arousal, you're right. You can't both have elevated heart rate and et cetera, and not have it at the same time. You're absolutely correct, 100%. But emotions are a combination of thoughts, of feelings, of other things, and you certainly can have arousal, but have a different interpretation of it, or a confused interpretation of it. Maybe a better statement, where you're feeling and not feeling, so you're in a state of both.
Let me see. Because I don't know
something else, but
I don't know if I see that you can have, like you said, like emotions is a combination of like thoughts and feelings. Yeah. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. Like, does a baby think that they're sad?
Let me give you an example.
Wait.
Let me give you an example.
I was gonna give you one.
Go ahead.
Like,
go ahead.
Does a baby think that they're sad, or do they just feel sad?
I don't know for a baby, but I'll tell you, if you're having a panic attack, you can feel the fear. You can also then not feel the fear, but still feel the racing pulse, the heart palpitations, etc. And are you still feeling fear or not? And that's a really interesting question, because what is fear? If you still have all the physiological, you're sweating, your heart is racing, it's palpating, there's another element to that gives you this fear, but you can use cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, to talk yourself out of the fear. You're still feeling the sensations. Are you still feeling the emotion or not, or is it a different emotion?
So,
it's a really good question.
Well, what I was trying to figure out was that, like, because if you say that like, let's say like a baby, for instance, right? Because it's at least for, I don't know if maybe it contains a contradiction, I'm not sure, but it's conceivable to me, at least, that you can have a baby where they feel sad, but they can't think of themselves being sad or think of sadness, right?
Right.
I think that sounds very consistent to me, right? So anybody who thinks they're sad, right?
Right.
But let's say, well, let me say it this way: feels sad, but doesn't think they're sad. That doesn't seem in and of itself contains like a contradiction itself.
I think I know the answer to this. We can stop. I think the reality is emotions are not a thing; they are a constellation of things. And I think the problem is that there's no consistent measure of that constellation of things. So in a human, an emotion is not just an on-off switch. It's a lot of different factors, and so it might be perceived as a contradiction. But you're right. Logically, one thing's turned off, one thing's turned on, but it's not, and you can't have both at the same time. But I'm saying the subjective experience, since it's a constellation of thoughts and hormones and other things, nerves, perhaps we can be illogical about that, because feelings do not follow the rules of logic always. You can be both. You really can. But on a biological level, you can't be.
Yeah.
I cannot physically have both things. You're right. But from a subjective standpoint, I can feel sad and not sad.
Yeah, I don't. I guess at this point we're just gonna keep beating a dead horse. We're gonna keep disagreeing.
I know. We can stop. I'm just saying that I just think
Yeah.
that the problem is you're looking at a very reductionist view of it's either it's this thing is on or off. And my point is you got a constellation of things that are muddy, and that when you turn some things off, it's still it's hard to tell whether or not that changes the feeling. So
Yeah, I don't think that it's a reductionist view. I just think like I just take what logic means to be obsolete or always true. I mean, not obsolete, sorry, but always true in every possible world. And be the conceptual mind being a possible world, it just doesn't seem like it follows that we can hold conceptual contradictions. But like, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, all I'm saying is, in an internal state, I think you can have contradictions. I agree with you. In reality, you can't have contradictions, but I think within the human being's experience, they can certainly have contradictions. But we can talk about this for another day.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Great conversation. You have a good one. Be safe.
Take care.
Be safe. Bye.